So let's talk about a different type of licensing today, and that is font licensing. But whoa, wait. Before you click off and say that's more digital asset management rather than IT asset management, hold on, wait 1 second. Because I'm sure that there are a lot of IT asset management professionals where they've had that conversation with their line manager, with another stakeholder that's senior to them, where they've gone, you wouldn't mind managing fonts, would you? I mean, it's just another type of license. You're already doing software, you're doing hardware. You're probably already doing SSL certificates if ITAM ends up being the home for everything. You wouldn't mind doing fonts, would you? So then you quickly scramble around to find out what on earth font licensing is. But scramble around no more, because we are going to go over the basics of font licensing in this video. But again, before we start, and if you have still stayed on the video and not clicked off because it's font licensing, please do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, it really does help us out. So very much with software licensing, font licensing gives you the ability and the right to use a particular font for whatever purposes that you need. More on that later, the different font licenses that you need. But it gives you the ability to use and leverage that font under the license, but it does not mean that you own that particular font, okay? So if you're buying a license for a font license, you don't own that font in any way, shape or form. Very much like when you buy a software license, you do not own that software. You're just being granted the use rights to be able to go and use it in a commercial environment, based upon the licensing terms set out. So font licenses are very similar in that respect. They are giving you the use rights to be able to use the particular font that you've purchased. Now, straight away, there are some fonts that are in-house that you've already built internally. If you're a big, well-known brand, you'll have worked on doing this already. They're probably already embedded into your core Office suite as well. They're mandatory when you're doing presentations and when you're doing Word documents and document management and policies and processes and stuff like that. We're talking about third-party ones that you're going out and proactively buying because you like it or you think it's going to look great in your presentation. Another thing that we should say, that interestingly, there are fonts that you actually cannot buy. So there are some really famous font structures that are completely copyrighted, and if you even use a hint of that font for personal or commercial use, then they will come after you, these big companies. I'm talking about people like Disney, for example, right? If you use a Disney font on a t-shirt and then sell it on Etsy or eBay or Vinted or whatever it is that you've created yourself, that is a trademark and copyright infringement. They own that font, they own that design, they own that style. And there's a load of fonts out there that you see them multiple times a day that you cannot buy, but you can buy alternatives that are not exactly the same, that you can license and use, and the big corporations won't come after you for using their trademark or their fonts. There's a lot of different font license types out there. So now we've established that font licensing is a commercial license that grants you the use rights to use a particular font. Let's then have a look at the different types of font license that you can buy out. So first of all, there are also fonts that are inbuilt into another application or another license type, and we won't classify those in this case because they are part of another product suite. So let's look at pure font only licensing. First kind of font licensing we have is device-based font licensing. This is used for printed materials such as brochures, commercial, physical handouts, flyers, whatever it may be. And this is where the font is licensed per computer that's running it. A lot of organizations actually tend to go with a more organizational site-wide license. If there's something that you want all of your stakeholders to use, it's something you want to embed into your presentations, your Word documents, your outputs, for example, not including websites. We'll mention that one in a second. But yeah, this desktop, whole site, whole company license seems to be the most popular one when you're buying a font that you want all of your users to be able to use. This is obviously a license type that ITAM professionals are really used to managing, really used to dealing with, and could probably just incorporate into existing ITAM policies and processes. So with that license type, there's probably not too much legwork or learning need to be done for those ones. I mean, in hindsight, if all of your fonts are site-wide or computer-based, you're laughing. It's easy to manage, but they're not. So it gets a bit more tricky when you start looking at web font licensing. Now, these are what they say on the tin. They are fonts that enable you to use that font in a commercial website to promote your company, your services, your organization, whatever it is. These are specific fonts that you then license per website, per URL, even in some cases what I found, but mainly it should cover the whole domain. But some of them are a bit pernickety where you have to say which page all of these fonts are on and buy it per page. Other ones, it's more per domain, per the whole website, you're covered as long as you let them know where it's all on. Web font licenses is typically licensed per domain, as we said before, so you can use the license across a lot of websites under your domain. Or, more terrifyingly and hard to manage from a budgeting perspective, monthly page views. MPV. Not MVP, MPV, monthly page views. Now, a lot of the font software that when we're doing some research looking at this, they actually do provide that analytics that very much like a licensing portal, where you can go in and see how many MPVs there have been on that particular month. However, what is quite scary about this one is if you're an organization and you've just released a new product, for example, you go viral, quote unquote, it goes mad, everyone wants to look at it. People then come onto your website, you get way more website traffic. Your web font licensing fees, if you are based on it monthly page views, is just gonna go up and up and up and up and up. You're gonna have to pay a lot of money. So, tricky one to manage. Again, I've never encountered this one. I've done the domain route when I've been asked to do fonts or the per computer model. This one never actually had hands-on experience with, but when looking at the case studies and some of the technologies where this licensing model happens for font licenses, there are metrics in the background that allow you to see the MPVs and allow you to kind of get forecasts and stuff like that on how much it would be if you had an extra 100,000, 500,000 million views on that particular web page, what that would equate to in terms of the monthly licensing costs that you have. A lot of these font providers also provide you bigger discounts and bigger leeway if you commit for a full 12-year period. Again, very much like SaaS, very much like the cloud structure. They're not that far away from what we're doing, which is why we're making this video, because people keep asking me, well, 3 people have asked me about font licensing, so I thought we may as well make a video. And actually, when you dig into it, it's a lot easier for ITAM to just pick it up, but there are some things that you definitely need to be aware of. Next up, we move to per app or per software. So this is if you're like a development organization, you're creating your own applications that you're either using in-house, putting it out on open source, or even selling it commercially. So this is when you're using commercialized fonts for those particular apps on the mobiles or software for desktops and laptops or even servers. There is a different server licensing model, which we'll go into in a second. But yeah, you're going to need a different license type if you are embedding these fonts into then software or apps that you're selling on or putting on an app store. So this license permits you to embed that commercial font in your app or your software, and you are typically then licensed by that app or the number of downloads that have occurred for it. Same on the software side of things, you would then be licensed by the software that the fonts are embedded into, and then you also factor in the amount of times that that's sold or downloaded, and that's how many licenses that you need. Again, this is kind of almost very retrospective licensing, as they'll look at your analytics, they'll look at the amount of downloads that there have been, and then you almost true up retrospectively as they look at the peaks and troughs of the month's usage, downloads, etc. See? It is interesting. Final main one to be aware of is server font licensing. I told you there was different licensing models for servers. So this is used when fonts are actually stored on one of your physical servers to generate imagery or automated PDFs or even manual based PDFs. But if the fonts are on the server and then these commercial fonts are used in those images or in those PDFs, then you will need a license for that server. It doesn't matter whether these are automated images or automated PDFs or automated media, or whether it's manually created or even scheduled or on demand. Again, if that commercial font is on that server and is used in any of the outputs that it's doing, you're going to need that license that covers the server. And finally, 2 less ITAM-y ones, but all the same, still quite interesting. Well, it's to me, hopefully to you as well. One really cool one, and I'm going to read this out because this is where it does get quite interesting. And again, it goes back to that thing of, you see the same kind of fonts with certain brands, etc. But this is more around film, television, music albums, etc. So there's actually broadcast and film licensing for fonts. Yep, very cool. So this is you use a font even for the little text at the bottom on terms and conditions, or images, sped up sequence when you're seeing a brand new iPhone that looks amazing, or a car that looks specced up and amazing, and you see at the bottom it's actually AI generated and not available in your country. There's licenses for all of those kind of fonts. So this is needed if a font appears in TVs, movies, online advertising, or even published music, things like an album cover and it's got text on it, or a CD release. Showing my age there are still CDs about, but if it's on the artwork for the CD cover as well. If you don't know what a CD is, please go and ask your parents. It's really not that much of an old technology. Still CDs about, calm down. Same for the DVDs as well. Ask your parents if you don't know what a DVD is. Blu-ray, whatever you know, a disc that you watch and plug in. We're not that old. It's still, have a look in shops. But you also need that, again, very similar to the CD. If you've got any font in the artwork on the sleeve, on the covers, that needs to be licensed if it's not something you've generated in-house. Really quite interesting, quite cool. Go and have a look next time you're in your media shop. Have a look and see all the different styles of fonts and stuff that are on CDs and are on game sleeves and are on Blu-rays. You then start to see how big and expensive font licensing actually can get. And actually, broadcast, film, TV, etc., media licensing is so much more expensive than the embedded one in software, or the server licensing, or the page on demands, or the number of page views licensing. This is so much more expensive. And then another one that's really expensive is e-publication font licensing. So this is when you're embedding fonts into ebooks that are sold online, PDFs, or even digital magazines. Again, really expensive licensing. If you're thinking about creating an ebook and self-publishing it on Amazon, make sure that you're using an open source or free font. Otherwise, if you're using a commercially licensed font, you will need to pay for it. And it probably won't be cheap. So just to give you some rough estimations then on some of the costs that we found, the commercial font licenses for desktop, they range between £20 and £150 we found, or $150 we found. Web fonts, ones that are based on the amount of page views we found, that can run into more of the £1,000 per year, depending on the amount of page views that you're getting. And the traffic, but you can negotiate with some vendors based on what your expectations are. But again, you'd need network monitoring tools in place to track all of the traffic to your websites. All organizations have that anyway. Even Sam Beast has tracking on what pages are being viewed. And all of that kind of stuff, so that we can see what's being accessed. Then some of the custom corporate fonts, some of them just straight up you cannot buy. They are trademarked. They are so ingrained in that brand, no one else can use anything like it. However, similar ones, people like Coca-Cola, Netflix, Pepsi, etc., ones that are similar to that one, they can actually cost tens of thousands of pounds to develop and also to license. So if you're ever working with Coca-Cola or Pepsi and you wanted to use their font or their branding, you're going to have to probably pay for that unless you've got something in a partnership. And then there are ones that are quite similar to this, that they do tend to go out and copyright strike and get taken down. But similar ones you can find out there on open source that are free. There are free font packages out there. Google Fonts, for example, is a free one where you can make use of the whole suite of their fonts that they provide. So how can you manage font licenses effectively? Very much like you manage your software licenses. Make sure you're gathering all of that entitlement information. Make sure you're tracking all of the usage and the spend. You can use your IT asset management tool because you're getting contracts, you're getting licenses through. Make sure you track it that way. Make sure you're leveraging any of the portals that they're providing, the monitoring and metering stats that they're providing as well. I'd also suggest working with your digital asset management team, your DAM team, your DAM team, because they're probably also managing some of the imagery and pictures and stuff like that your organization leverages. So work with them as well to have a centralized area for all of these fonts physically, so that you know where they're being used internally. If it is on that server, you know what server it is, you know what the outputs are. If it's a site-wide one, you're good. It's probably less of a requirement to manage those ones, the page on demand ones, etc. And if you're in that film and media industry, then you absolutely need to be managing all of this centrally, including the actual fonts themselves. Have it in a repository, have it centralized, access controlled, and all of that kind of stuff. And really then start to go through your change management process if anyone wants to use these fonts in documentation, for example, or a particular project, so that you can check and make sure that this has no additional impact on the font licensing that you've already purchased. Very much with the software as well, you need to keep reviewing the usage and consumption of this so that you don't end up overspending. That's another thing that seems to creep under, because ITAM people have so many other priorities. If you are lumbered with font licensing, I didn't mean lumbered, sorry, font licensing. If you are given font licensing to manage, please don't forget to keep monitoring usage and tracking it, internal reviews, all of that good stuff. Just treat it as another software license. Make it use and leverage all of the existing ITAM, SAM processes that you have within your organization. And finally, a really good way of managing this is like you would restrict unapproved software and unapproved downloads. Do the same for fonts. If you don't want people using or downloading fonts that they found themselves if you don't want your employees using fonts that they found online or purchased themselves through a credit card or purchased at home, block the ability to be able to use it, block downloads, block the ability to use it. Don't let them bring an unlicensed or a free for personal use or purchased on their own card or their own personal license. Don't let it get into your corporate environment, because like with software licensing, it'll just get messy. You start running the risk of non-compliance, you start running the risk of copyright breaches, you start running the risk of breaching the terms set out in that end user license agreement, very much like with software. So based on that, as you can see, there is a lot of ways in which font licensing relates to ITAM. So if you are given the honour of managing font licenses or being asked to manage font licenses within ITAM, there's a lot of similarities. We can just embed a lot of it into our existing ITAM processes. However, there are some of those niche licensing, especially the amount of pages, views, the download of the apps, download of the software, and the server ones as well, that need a little bit of tinkering, a little bit more management. But do your audits on them, manage the spend, make sure that you are controlling it, and hopefully font licensing isn't just God, we've got another thing to manage. They've already given us SSL certificates and all of our normal ITAM stuff, and now we're looking at green ops and thin ops, and I know there's a lot coming in ITAM at the moment. But if you are given the challenge of managing font licensing, hopefully I've given you a bit of background, some of the basics, and food for thought on how you can manage and optimize that moving forward, and hopefully save a bit of money in the process of doing so. So, as always, before you go, please make sure you are subscribed. Don't forget to like this video. We will see you next week for another video here at the Sam Beast YouTube channel. But until then, good luck looking after your fonts. Have a look in shops. Find out what a DVD is. And until next time, till next week, happy ITAMing.